Welcome back to Streamline Entertainment. We're going to be talking about John Venables, technically the child killer. This did happen a long time ago for those who don't know, but we're going to be discussing a conversation as Jeremy clashes over future, basically, for the child killer. Let's get straight into the video.
Documentaries, you share platforms with Ralph Bolger, who is, by the way, back on this show on Tuesday, not speaking to anybody else. I for one, completely am delighted by this result, and I hope he stays there forever. You, sir?
Well, I don't put it quite like that, but it was absolutely the right decision. I would have been amazed if the parole board did anything different than keep him in prison. But I think we do have to accept that he may be fit or deemed safe to release at some point.
I hope not.
In the future. Well, the law takes its own course, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
And can you give a bit of an explanation as to why he is still in prison? Because obviously there were two killers of Jamie, one of whom has been released and has been rehabilitated into society under a false name. John Venables has not. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so Robert Thompson, as you said, has blended back into society. We haven't heard from him again. He hasn't committed any further offences. John Venables, sadly, went on to commit offences collecting child pornography. He was recalled to prison in 2010. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He was released, and then he was found again to have collected child pornography. So he's obviously been very deceitful.
Seems like this John Venables has not really learned anything from what he's done. And this sounds like to me that there are major mental health problems with them, but not just the one of them, with them both. But I'm glad that the board looked into it, and then the parole board looked into it and had not given him his freedom, because I think he'd probably be a bit of a danger to society, and it'll never be forgotten what they'd done back in the day.
And one of the things that the parole board mentioned yesterday when they issued their summary of the case was that they were concerned that he wasn't being open and honest with those who were.
That's the point, isn't the trustworthiness of Venables. The point that I made before is probably based emotionally on the fact that I know the family. I think a lot gets made about, rehabilitation. That's fine. I tend to want to talk about, and I know your book talks about it, a family who have been utterly traumatised and just ruined over 30 years because of this callous act. And I think that the very least
I can't believe that it's been that so long at the end of the day, because obviously it made front page news for a long number of times, and I do feel sorry for the family, as the young toddler just wandered off and they were picked up by these two evil boys and beat him and stoned him to death, which was just absolutely disgusting. But like I said, they've one of them have done their time, but it's still unforgivable that he's given them a different name. And people do go on the straight and narrow, but what they've done, I should say, is still unforgivable and never be forgotten, especially by the families. So,
parole board should have done was what they did do. That's it. And one thing I was going to ask you, because you noticed, we were talking about this earlier, when can he be released then? When's the next time we go through this debacle?
Well, I think he's got to wait for a couple of years now before he gets another opportunity to be released. I mean, I think you should bear in mind that John Venables and Robert Thompson were just 10 years old. They were still primary school children when they
murdered a kid, though.
They did indeed, but they were 10 years old. They were still children themselves. So although they did what they did, they were 10 years old, they did murder a child. But we have to allow for the prospect of rehabilitation.
I can't have that. I'm sorry.
In Robert Thompson's case,
Robert
that's worked.
Thompson has been
But the problem is, people will say to me, they'll go, but they were 10 years of age, they were young kids, there'll be a reason for it. There are plenty of 10-year-old kids, hundreds of millions of them, who have bad upbringings and don't live in a nice place and their parents aren't great parents, who don't murder kids. And the point that we always make, and I remember Ralph saying this as well, Nick, when we interviewed him, is They tried to grab a child 5 minutes beforehand who ran away from them. So that's premeditated. So we can sit and go, oh, they were 10.
It's like I said, this was planned. I don't care how young the child is, they knew what they were doing. And it's you know, it's like Jeremy said, they tried to get a child 5 minutes before. So it's not, they knew what they went out for. At the age of 10, yes, you are young, but you still know what's wrong and what's right.
They're evil. Evil.
Well, I can't accept that they're evil.
Why not? They murdered a kid.
Because I don't really understand what evil means. They did something terrible. They were 10 years old. They were barely at the age of criminal responsibility. And yes, I accept that there was a degree of premeditation.
But they must be evil to do that
well,
to a child.
The act, of course, is
no.
evil.
I mean, I can accept that it's an evil act, but they're not.
Look, I always think if someone has done that, those capabilities are always going to be there. Yeah, you can go to rehab, but they've done something which was unforgivable, and that is an evil act, and they would have done it to any child that they got their hands on that day. It's just as simple as that. It's callous, it's cold, and it's evil. It's as simple as that at the end of the day. One of them, Robert Thompson, is out. He started a new life under a different name, which was fair enough at the end of the day, but I'm sure the law and the government are keeping an eye on him. But still, it's something that he must always think about. Why didn't I do that? And has to go through life with that through his whole life, what he'd actually done. That's unforgivable.
Evil. I mean, Robert
you
Thompson.
have to be evil to murder a child at 10. It's not
well,
excusable because of an age, is it?
Define
I mean, I think that's quite a simplistic way of looking at it. So,
how would you describe it to the viewers and me this morning then? How would you describe a 10-year-old who tries, two of them, who try to grab a kid who runs away, then they grab another one and they murder him? How is that not evil?
Well, I would say that it was that they were very disturbed children.
Oh, come on, man. What, are you going to excuse it?
I'm not excusing it.
You're saying that they were children. 10-year-olds don't murder other kids unless they're evil.
But I think the point that the wider
Don't
point
accept that at all.
that needs to be made here
Ridiculous.
is that to young children at the age of 10 don't suddenly get an idea to act in this way. There must be something that is influencing them, or they've picked this up from some other source, because I don't believe that a 10-year-old child is purely evil in their soul and they would have come up with this.
You don't think there are bad eggs in the world?
Yes, I do believe there are bad eggs in the world, but how do we legislate for that? How do we legally punish people for being
Leave them in prison forever.
Okay, well, Robert Thompson is not in prison forever. There's obviously different ways that people can be rehabilitated. The issue here, as we've said, is that he is continuing to pose a threat to
kids.
Children.
That's even worse. That's absolutely disgusting at the end of the day. It sounds like this John Venables has got a lot of mental health problems at the end of the day, which has never been absolutely dealt with. But sometimes you just wonder what traumatic experiences he went through as well at the end of the day, because kids must get it from somewhere. This is what I think. Yes, they've done very bad, both of them, but to not have any remorse technically for what they've done, and John basically posing a threat to children, that tells you that there's something seriously wrong.
I think it's really interesting that the parole board can make decisions based on his likelihood to reoffend when it's regards to child sexual abuse images, because he won't have access to that in prison. So they essentially have to take his word for it that he will not be accessing the internet when he's out in the real world, which of course is so incredibly accessible for everybody.
They said they didn't trust him though, didn't they?
Yeah, but how could they possibly ever trust him?
In effect, and that's been the problem for him, that he's been deemed to be a minimal risk on 2 occasions. He's been released back into society, and he's had access to the internet, obviously deceiving the probation officer, those in charge of him. So until he can provide assurance that he is being open and honest about what he did and who he is, and that the risk can be mitigated in some way. I mean, it's not about him not having posing any risk. as long as he provides, or there's a risk that can be managed in some way.
But you talk about a managed risk. That's the point. And Nick's right. He's been given 2 opportunities, and yeah, absolutely. I'm not.
2 opportunities. That's more than enough to be given a different life. More than enough. What more can the system do? They've obviously tried to help them, a parole board or the parole officer, to get him to think good, to be good, to get a working life. But the mentality, it's all about sometimes the mentality. Some people are good and some people are bad. It's as simple as that, and he's bad.
I'm not trying to cause an argument. I know both of these people, and I will not accept. And I would always say to people like you, if that had been your 3-year-old son, you wouldn't be sitting here saying to me, oh, in another couple of years he can prove it. Twice he's been let out. Twice he has been deemed to be a damage to kids, right? The British taxpayer has paid for 30 years for that piece of whatever to rot. And there are, by the way, my friend...
I feel the same at the end of the day, because it's the taxpayers' money who's keeping him in prison, and he's keeping away from people who want to attack him, and probably got a pretty good life where he is, do you know what I mean, for what he's done. But like I said, I think there are a lot of people who are still angry about this and why they actually done it. And like I said, the families will always suffer. A 3-year-old is just horrific.
And millions of people who think he should never see the light of day. And I made
100.
no... that's genuinely how I feel, because I know, having spoken to Ralph Bolger personally, not just on television, I know what it did. It ruined their marriage, it ruined their family, and John Venables is a menace and a liar and should never see the light of day. Can't change that
But the
opinion.
other killer is out.
So what? We're not talking about the other fellow, we're talking about a bloke who was let out twice and is a sexual... I mean, God, we talk on this show the whole time about how we should protect children and protect all these people. He is a danger to kids. And I would respectfully
the justice
suggest...
system has worked?
No, not at all.
Because he's not been given parole.
I mean,
I think the justice system should throw away the key.
Well, then you're saying that we should do away with justice. That we should
No, you're
some
not. I'm
kind
talking
of...
about specific cases, and I said to you with respect...
Who decides which ones they are?
If that was your
you?
kid, what would you be saying?
Well, what about if it was
What would you be saying if that was your kid?
Let's
My child...
let's
If my
not-
child...
Yeah, I agree. Listen, they were very 10 years of age at the end of the day, but what the hell did cross their mind in what they were thinking and what they were doing? Yes, it was premeditated, because they tried to take other children before that. They must have been scoping the area. It was a plan, and they wanted to see that plan through, which was absolutely awful. It's unforgivable at the end of the day. It really, really is.
child had done that, I would never want them out.
I want to draw a line at using people's individual children, because I think that is an emotive subject that I just don't want to get into. However, we would all agree, I think, just to end this segment, that justice has been served in the sense that he has not been released.
Yeah, I agree
which
with
is
that.
absolutely important. Well,
It's just emotional to me because I know them, and that's the truth.
I understand.
Of course. Well, David James Smith, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
So that's the end of the video, and I thought Jeremy was 100% right, 100% behind him. I know what the gentleman's saying is that people always need another chance, but he's been given other chances. All right, the other boy, Robert Thompson, he's out under a different name at the end of the day, but I think the government and the authorities should still keep an eye on him, but I'm sure they are at the end of the day. But John Venables should stay and basically rot where he is, because that was just completely damaging to the family, and that poor boy, young, toddler, went through. It was just unbelievable. Anyway, let me know what you think, whether he should come out or he should stay in prison. Let me know what your thoughts are, and don't forget to subscribe to Streamline Entertainment and follow the channel. Thank you very much for listening in.